I am sure sports. You know me there, I'm coast to coast representing. I mean, I say this is righteous representing for Omar. You don't know, come get the sports over here from near and far. Boy. Me say I am sure sports, one thing me sure about. When me say sure, that me not doubt. Come get your sports, get it over here. Come subscribe, repost and share. I am sure sports, one thing me sure about. When me say sure, that me not doubt. Come get your sports, get it over here. Come subscribe, repost and share. If me not sure, that me not say it. Know who score, that me not say it. Never know no game play, that me not say it. If me never seen a game, me not know who play. For your sports news, better come over here so. For your soccer news, then come over here so. If you don't love sports, still come over here so. For the day done, you are gonna love over here so.
So when it comes on to behavior concerning football, Jamaica is decent. I am sure that if we can get all of these things done, set in place by the end of April, it gives us enough time before the World Cup campaign. Not afraid of no Brazil, no Argentina with these crap of players. We are good enough. Remember to like, subscribe, share. Listen, comment. Let me know what your thoughts are.
Trick Jerk Marinade gives your meats and vegetables authentic Jamaican jerk flavor. The spices are directly from Jamaica. Spices like jerk seasoning, allspice, Scotch bonnet pepper, fresh scallions, thyme, ginger, and garlic. The key ingredients to a great jerk marinade. 0% sugar and low in sodium. You want to try it?
Made up of 18 Jamaican herbs and spices. Add delicious, bold flavor to your next grilling experience. Flavoring sauce, a marinade, basting, condiment, or topping. Trick Nick Jerk Barbecue Sauce.
All right, greetings and welcome to I Am Sure Sports. I am your host, Man. On this day that is celebrated as Boxing Day. Don't know if you know, but part of the tradition of Boxing Day is that we, from our Christmas dinner, we put foods in boxes and we give to those who are less fortunate. And so thanks to all our subscribers who are able to support and help I Am Sure Sports in that, because we provided meals and supported and helped others. And it's always good to do that. Happy festive season to you and your family. Hope you're in good health. Right, and we have a very special show for you today. But before we get into it, I want to say a big thank you to our sponsors who have been with us for this year. Prestige Finance, lending a helping hand when you need it the most. You can call them at 876-884-7390. They're located in Linstead, St. Catherine, Jamaica, and they offer you loans of up to 100,000 Jamaican dollars. There's no processing fee, same day processing, and the interest rate is only 0 to 4%. Also to Launch Legacy, where they handle risk and they seek legacy for all your personal insurance need in Canada and the USA. Visit them at launchlegacy.com or call or text them at 647-989-0782. It is the place, Launch Legacy, where when you stop working for money, they get your money to start working for you. Welcome to every person in the comment section, to all our moderators who help to moderate stuff in the comment section. We appreciate you and we thank you. Blessed day to every single one of you. So this is on I Am Sure Sports, and it is also on I Am Sure Sports Caribbean, that channel that we dedicate to doing Caribbean content, where we go beyond the borders of Jamaica to deal with sports in the other nations in the Caribbean. As we always say, as a Caribbean community, we are better together than we are apart. And I have my very good friend. We do I Am Sure Sports Caribbean together. His name is Andre Fortune. He's going to be on with me, and we have a very special guest from Trinidad and Tobago. You know, I'm making sure that I get that right, because every time I do this, if I say Trinidad, I'm in problems. If I say Tobago, we get a whole lot of message that we are showing disrespect. So it is For me, I'm going to say TNT. All right. That way, everyone is captured. So I'm going to introduce Andre to you. You know him very well. Like I tell you, he's in good mood because we are still top of the league. So let him come and gloat a little bit.
Top of the league, my friend. Did you see that performance yesterday?
I am telling you, it was a
Before we
lesson
jump
in
into
how to
that, though,
pass the football.
let me say thank you for taking the time to do this today, because for me, the football in the region is important, and I want to thank you for taking time to do this today. Prior to yesterday, there was a lot of talk about whether or not we could remain at the top of the table. And I think the ease with which we dismiss our opponent yesterday, I think speaks volumes to what's going to happen in the next few months. It speaks volumes. You can't look to win the league. You have to be on top of the table. All right, and where are we now?
We are top of the league. We are top of the league. Well, I don't want to do too much because next thing, our guest is not a supporter of Arsenal and may just leave the back room before we bring him on. So let's stop talking about Arsenal just in case.
No, he's a strong guy. I don't think he would do that.
But go ahead and introduce our guest today, and then we will get into this as we discuss the status of Caribbean football today and look into 2026 and what as a Caribbean community we are doing and CONCACAF in general. So go ahead, Sir Andre.
Today we have Dion La Foucade. Dion is the former technical director of Trinidad and Tobago Football Association. He has held different coaching positions in his career at various organizations, both in Trinidad and Tobago and abroad. He's been coaching for 36 years. And he's also been a national youth coach in Trinidad and Tobago and a mentor, life enhancement coach to people both in Trinidad and outside of Trinidad. And he agreed to come on today and share his expertise, his experience with us and discuss what the 2026 World Cup would mean to the region.
All right, so here we go. This is the man. Dion.
Hi, everybody. Thank you for having me very much, Andre and Manningsman. It's really a pleasure to be here on I Am Sure Sports and I Am Sure Sports Caribbean. It's really a pleasure to be here.
Wonderful. So good having you. Don't worry about the Gunners thing, it's just between us. If you feel offended by that, don't worry.
I am a Liverpool supporter, but we are just trying to get in the top 6 for now.
You see, I told you he's very even keel. He understands it.
Yes. How the tables have turned. I remember years ago that would be my comment. We're only trying to get into the top 6, so it's good that is not the state of Arsenal right now. But so good to have you. And we'll begin, and then I'll hand over to Andre. Just share with the viewers out there, just a little bit about how you started in football and, in a synopsis, how you got to this place, that you're a technical director, head coach, and mentor. Where did it all start? Did you transition into coaching? Where did it all start for you? And just, share with us how you ended up in this position.
Oh, most certainly. When I tell people I've been coaching for 36 years, people look at me and go, wow, you look so young. What happened? I got a knee injury at age 16 and went basically started coaching then. And at St. Anthony's College in Trinidad and Tobago, I was player of the year as a defender. And then, but straight after that, went into coaching. I had one of those injuries where I really could not continue playing. So I just decided, I love the game so much and I'll continue coaching. And basically one thing led to another. There was a guy by the name of Kenny Lai who had a coaching school in Trinidad. And he invited me on to work with the younger players, the 4-year-olds. And then from there, I just went on from one thing to another, got into coaching, doing a bunch of courses, seminars, and so. And here I am today. There's a lot that has gone through, and I've done stuff in England, Brazil, Holland, Italy, Trinidad and Tobago, the Caribbean, USA. So just to give you a little idea of what I've done by way of qualifications, which has led me to where I am now. And I did lots of coaching. So I'm glad to be here and I've seen the game from grassroots all the way to the World Cup level. So I have some experience in the game.
During what period were you the technical director for Trinidad and Tobago? Make sure I say that Trinidad and Tobago.
Right. So I came in just prior to the COVID. So I landed in Trinidad the end of January 2020. Right. I was just taking up another contract. So I was in Colorado for a while. As director of coaching for a club there. Then I was technical director for a club in Virginia. And then I was going back to Colorado to take up another job. And then this offer came up. So I came in just prior to COVID.
Okay. But you were the under-17 coach before that?
Yes, I was back in the 90s. Yeah, I was under-17 coach and also assistant national under-17 coach prior to that as well. So as I said, I don't have the exact dates, but I've been involved in the game for a while. And I also had a coaching school in Trinidad and Tobago for 26 years. I also ran a school in Trinidad and Tobago.
Okay. I mean, given just from your perspective, and I know Andre have a lot more questions here, but from your perspective, from a Caribbean perspective, just give me your views on where you believe football in the Caribbean is at, and where does Trinidad and Tobago fit in that scale? Like, if you were to rate in comparison to the other regions, where is football in the Caribbean?
Sure. I would consider, if I were to first answer one part of your question, Trinidad and Tobago, Jamaica has been one of those, we have been basically going neck and neck with top Caribbean football. We have had other Caribbean islands actually doing well at times, but I would consider Trinidad and Tobago to be one of the top countries. If I were to look at CONCACAF, Trinidad and Tobago, I would say sometimes we look as if we belong. Sometimes we don't look as if we belong in CONCACAF. All right, and we have had, yes, the 2006 World Cup. We've been one of the contenders at the World Cup in Germany, but that was when we were on a high. November 19, I'll go all the way back to November 19, 1989, and I saw one of your programs, which you all did so wonderfully, with one of the fans of Trinidad and Tobago talking about that experience. And so, but 1989 is a time when we had a chance of qualifying, as you know, and we lost that one goal to USA, Paul Caligiuri goal. So I would say that we at times look like we belong, at times we don't.
Yeah. All right, Andre.
Thanks, man. Dion, something a little off note. You mentioned that at 16 you may not remember, but I'd ask anyhow. You said you were the player of the year at St. Anthony's?
Yes, I was player of the year at St. Anthony's College. So that was for the school. I was voted under Coach Grosvenor for the player of the year as a defender. Yes.
What do you remember? What the criteria was?
That's a great question for player of the year. I think it was more all round than just on the field. I think my leadership qualities had a part to play in it, and the type of person I was, being on time and punctual, and not only as a player, so on and off the field. I think that was one of the criteria.
Okay, that's a long way back to actually. That's a little bit unfair because that's a long time ago. But
yeah,
but I needed to ask you that. Could you tell us a little bit about the academy you had in Trinidad and Tobago and how that?
So the academy in Trinidad and Tobago ran for 26 years, and I held it in 2 different venues in Trinidad and Tobago. And that actually went quite well, because at one point in time, and this is not a boast, but just to say, I had a couple hundred kids in my school, and we were very much known for developing technique, right? Working with players really on the technical side of the game and developing players, which some of the players went on to national teams, some went on to get scholarships, quite a few players actually. But I was very, very big on developing technique and developing the whole person.
Okay.
And you did that for 26 years. What, as we know, that doesn't exist today. What got you out of that?
To be quite honest, 10 years prior to leaving Trinidad and Tobago, I wanted to leave because you know, it's one thing, and you would say in one sense, I was sort of swimming upstream because I believe that development must come before winning. And most times you go and you play in tournaments and competitions, everybody just wants to win as opposed to developing players the correct way.
So I want you to explain that to me, right? Sorry to cut. You said development must come before winning. Is that at a particular stage, or that's just general at all levels? When does winning become important? And I ask that in the context, like I know that the schoolboy league just finished in Trinidad with Fatima going up against St. Benedict's, and I think they are supposed to be at some point playing against the champions in Jamaica, who Jamaica College and Clarendon College in a tournament. And I don't know what it is like in Trinidad, but I know in Jamaica, at the school level, which is the primary way that players transition, it's not about development first. It's about getting the ultimate title, the Manning Cup, the Costa Cup, the Olivier Shield, and so less time is being spent on developing players, and more time is spent on preparing teams to win. Now, if the academies are not there, like you said, not there anymore, how does development happen? And the shifting of the focus from development, from winning to development, and what is the incentive?
That's a great question, Mannix, man. That's a great question. So let me answer you. I'll say a few couple of things. One, if you're thinking about winning, right? Before you win, you have to learn how to compete. Before you compete, you have to learn how to play the game. Before you learn how to play the game, you have to master the ball. So there are different stages at different age groups that you have to take on board before you try to win. For me, right, and this is just my philosophy, and I know I'm not the only person in Trinidad and Tobago that thinks this way, and I'm sure in the Caribbean. But if you're talking about development, you're developing players for what? Are we developing players for a high school league that is very, very well sponsored, which it is? And all kudos to the sponsors who take part in that. But are we developing players for a high school league, or are we developing players to play at CONCACAF level? And to me, it should be to play at CONCACAF level. If you take, and I say this with the utmost respect, if you take some of the best players now, you just talked about St. Benedict's, Fatima, and look at these players, in my opinion, some of them cannot play on a CONCACAF level. Right? So the games are being streamed, and it's easier for college coaches to be seen, for them to see the games and so. But to me, we should be developing players to play at CONCACAF level, from under 15 to under 17 to under 20 to Olympics to the Senior World Cup. We are not doing that. It's the league is very hyped up, a lot of sponsors, a lot of media. But to me, I want to make a point here. To me, winning is when you could sign that dotted line to receive a scholarship or a contract. That's what winning is. A university coach is only interested in three things. One, what academically you bring to the table as a player. Two, your personality, right? Two, your personality, and how good are you as a player? What can you bring to the table? So we have to be very careful what is really winning. I've watched a couple of your programs, and I love when you guys talk about strategic planning, and I know, Andrew, we're going to get into that in a little bit. But when you start talking about what do we need to do to make sure our players have the tools to go on in the game.
Yeah, very important. I'm just wondering, because if you use the school system, and like I said, ask that because I think development can only happen in the Caribbean, which includes Jamaica and Trinidad, through academies. So if we don't have enough academies and the kids are going into school, how are we going to develop? To play the CONCACAF? Go ahead.
Can I jump in there a little bit?
Yeah.
I'd like to add, are we developing players to play at the CONCACAF level? I'm in football too and work with young players, and I think what I put in the head is we are trying to develop you to become world class, to play at the highest level possible. But we look at schoolboy football in the Caribbean through the lens of the past. This is my observation. And we spend a lot of time commemorating and eulogizing the past. So we are resistant to change, to realize that our best players in the Caribbean probably should not be playing in schoolboy football. They should be playing for clubs. They should be training on a daily basis, because what do you compare a 15-year-old to in the Caribbean? It must be to a 15-year-old in Spain or England or Argentina or Brazil, and whether or not he's at the same level. If you comparing a 15-year-old to another 15-year-old in the Caribbean, then that kind of it lower the standards from my perspective. So I think we got to look at what is happening, where we are in the world today, the present, right? And we have to try to bridge the gap between the present and the future. We need people with commitment to young people, and to grow in the game. So we need to get. I think there's a role for schoolboy football. I think it's extracurricular activities in school, right? That's what it's made out to be. But we have turned it into something else, and we are trying to hold on to it when the world has moved on. And I know there's a lot of people that's probably going to disagree with that, because sometimes we think geographically, we think within the walls of whatever island that we live on, and not beyond that. And I think we have to start to think beyond that.
I totally agree with you, Andre, because when we look at the role that the club's supposed to play, they're not playing that role. And they're not playing that role because at the end of the day, and I say this again with the utmost respect, the level of coaching that needs to happen at the younger ages is not happening. And then we talk about coach education and the level of our coaches, but that needs to happen. The TTFA, the Trinidad and Tobago Football Association, in my opinion, should really be trying to develop the players. But there's a big fight in Trinidad and Tobago with regards to the schools, because the principals of the schools are saying that we want our players when we have the season, and the Trinidad and Tobago does not make it, how should I say, attractive enough to be able to keep the players. So the players are basically lent back to the schools, and then they come back into what we call the high performance program. I want to mention something to you guys also. I'm not sure if you're aware. Based on the FIFA Echo Analysis report that was done in Trinidad and Tobago, and also a number of islands, Caribbean countries, and countries around the world, it was found that Trinidad and Tobago has 150 coaching schools. Some call themselves academies as well. 150. But FIFA has said that none of them has qualified to be a quote-unquote academy. Not one has met the criteria to be an academy.
Wow. Well, but this is so important, because the head of the licensing, or the person who leads the licensing of coaching in the region right now is Carnell from Trinidad. I think because it's Carnell.
Anton Cornell.
Carnell, because he just did like the D, the C, and the B and the A licensing, which is a CONCACAF license. But he's from Trinidad and Tobago, and he's doing that, which is part of the whole coaching development. So it's pretty surprising, given that and the function that he plays, that the academies in Trinidad and Tobago don't meet the requisite standard in FIFA's eyes. So then because that, I would have to ask then, do the coaches then meet the requisite standard in FIFA's eyes to cause that development to take place? If the person who is streamlining it is in Trinidad and the academies are not there, and I'm not trying to knock what he's doing, I'm just asking like real questions, you know.
Well, let's look at it this way: the players that we have are like plasticine, or they're like clay. And what we do with the players depends on how far along the players get, or what are the highest levels, as Andrew just talked about. What do they attain? And they first to begin, it's in Trinidad and Tobago, and I'm not sure in Jamaica, it's a very, very hard to get what is the philosophy. What is the philosophy? How do we want to develop our players? That has been very, very hard to attain by even Anton, and Anton will tell you that, to get all the coaches on the same space, so to speak, to think the same philosophy. Because with philosophy, then you'll have the methodology. But we must first understand, because there are coaches in Trinidad and Tobago will tell you, with my 6-year-olds, we want to have the best team in Trinidad and Tobago, which is very weird. And what is sad, there are so many competitions, even with the younger kids, and people are literally boasting how good their players are. So again, we have the wrong, in my opinion, this is the wrong philosophy, how players need to be developed and what is important at the younger ages.
Who is responsible for that? The technical committee in the different regions, or the technical director who is a part of the technical committee? Who determines what the philosophy is? Is it the federation, seeing that they are more stable than the technical director who can be fired? Is it the technical committee? And is, once that philosophy is set, does it stay, and how long? You know, what is the duration of the philosophy if the technical director is gone, or if the president is gone?
Well, I think honestly that should come as one of the goals and objectives from a strategic plan, and that should be from the federation, because in Trinidad and Tobago it's still people doing their own things. It's the Trinidad and Tobago Football Association is finding it very hard to bring everybody under one umbrella. Part of the problem you have is that the secondary schools football, again, and you can, management, you can guide me. Part of the problem we have here is that the secondary schools football is, although a part of the Trinidad and Tobago Football Association, they are a separate entity that is run by the Ministry of Education.
Yes. Same thing in Jamaica.
Makes it very difficult to bring everybody under the same umbrella. There are coaching schools in Trinidad that operate and that are not affiliated to the Trinidad and Tobago Football Association. Having said that, I know now from what I understand, they are trying their very best to get coaching schools, academies now sanctioned by the Trinidad and Tobago Football Association, but that is that is very, very hard to do, because people still feel that they can operate on their own. So there's no regulation. People are doing whatever they want to do, which makes it very hard for Trinidad and Tobago.
Let me ask you, Dion. It sounds like you're talking about something that is beyond football. It seems as though you're talking about the inability to work together as a people, because, you know, as I hear you talk, I think about the Belgian story, right? And how they got their act together after not qualifying for the World Cup, you know, after having horrible experiences. And they got together and they did the research and they came up with a plan. And we enjoyed the likes of Kevin De Bruyne and Eden Hazard. And, you know, as a result of that work, it seems as though, why aren't we able, because this is not about football now. This is about us as a country saying that we want the best for our country. We want the best for our young people. We want the best of everything. So why can't the people in football get together and say, and is it because we don't respect each other? What do you think the problem is?
And that's partly the problem, Andre, that the coaches need to do a better job, and all the organizations of coming together and looking at what do we want to produce, what do we want for our football. And I have to say that at various times, attempts have been made to bring all the coaches under one umbrella, but that still has not happened. And that is, I think, a huge problem we have in Trinidad and Tobago, where we are very disjoined. So in terms of one strategic plan going forward, that has made it very, very difficult.
Yeah, that's some interesting thought, because I suppose everyone want the same end, but we can't find a way to come together to ensure that we have the same. And just want to say to the persons in the comment section, because they're having a different dialogue in the comment section. They're talking about 2026 and the recruitment in Trinidad, and I know there are questions. So we're going to come to your questions shortly. But there is one that is very interesting that I saw earlier. It says, and this is it says the Caribbean Union needs to come together and build football within the region. All the islands need to be playing throughout the year to help development. And that is something that we have been advocating for in Jamaica, that our schoolwide competition, the competition itself starts in September and finishes at the beginning of December. So September, October, November, December. And only around 8 or 4 schools are still playing in December. And this is over 100 schools. So you're looking at 100 schools only playing football September, October, and the beginning of November, like 2.5 months. And if that is your major way of developing players, there is an issue. And I'm not asking for the schools to do more, but like I said, the federation needs to find ways of creating leagues, even if it's a Caribbean Academy League, where, academies are in Trinidad and they can come on tour and play in Jamaica, and vice versa, where the kids are playing football on a regular basis, but still be able to play for their schools, if they so desire.
What you just spoke about there, Mannix, is exactly what, and of course I will call his name that you guys would know, René Simoes, all right, who took Jamaica to the World Cup 1998 and who came to Trinidad and Tobago after that, has said that when he came into Trinidad and Tobago, he said the secondary schools league season is too short. You can't play for 2 to 3 months and expect these players to develop. And of course, people were talking about why it can't happen, because the same grounds that are used, the school uses the same ground to play cricket. And this is nothing against cricket. But we need to, as you rightly said, we need to find a way that there is a league where we can get our players playing for 8, 9, 10 months of the year. Because part of playing is not only training, but also developing. And that is a problem in Trinidad and Tobago. And I'm guessing, as I just heard, in Jamaica as well.
I think that problem exists all over the Caribbean, and I don't know that problem is going to be solved if we can't get together and come up with something. I can tell you that, we just watched the World Cup, and the host of the World Cup, right, in 2004 started what they call the Aspire Academy. It was funded by the government initially, right? And then private, it became a business outside of that, and they expanded it to different places in the world. And almost every player that played for that country in that World Cup came through that. I see right now there's a conversation taking place. You were the technical director. There's a conversation taking place. And it just, from my observation, it seems that everybody wants to run football. Right, but nobody wants. Where's our Aspire Academy? Where's our future? Where's our desire, our commitment to come up with something that would serve our young people today, so that they can have a future? Because people are wanting to have, and rightfully so. Young people are wanting to have a future in the game. Okay, but we've got to give them something. We got to give them a pathway, and that pathway seems to not exist. What is the interest that right now? I think I read a couple of articles today. What is the interest in running the football at the federation level? Why is the interest so strong? As opposed, if I have money in Trinidad, and I want to do something for football, it's void of a real opportunity to develop players, a real opportunity with world-class facilities, okay, proper training ground, with just the right environment, with the expertise to bring players in, so that they could grow not only as footballers, but as people as well, so that when they're interviewed, they can speak in the manner in which they're supposed to. Why is nobody interested in that?
That's a great question. I think again, one of the problems that again we just talked about the high school league. Everybody's interested in winning, right? I've gone around and I've looked at the coaching, because what you're talking about there, Andre, has to come from. I mean, look, I'm going to talk a little directly to the FIFA report where they talk about management structure, the resources, talent development and identification, academies, national teams, domestic competition, coach education, management and strategies, talent pathways. Those things must come into play. Those things have to come into play because we must identify the talent and then decide how we're going to train the talent. But again, it's sad, and again, I'm asking because I don't know in Jamaica if it is the amount of academies they have, but also who are we sending? Who's training the best players? And I know Trinidad and Tobago, we just started what FIFA is now calling the high performance program, formerly the elite program, and we have kids as young as the under 15s, under 13s training. But who is really working with our best players? And that is very, 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 very important. As I say, we have this raw material, but what are we doing to give ourselves the best chance? And for example, and I want to go back to the high schools, if the high schools in Trinidad and Tobago are saying, no, we want our players and we're not allowing our players to be developed by the clubs and academies, I think we have a huge problem.
Let me ask you this, because you spoke about the ECHO report that was done by FIFA. Is it for all the territories, or it is collectively, or is it individually? So one was done for Trinidad, one was done for Jamaica, one was done for the Grenadines, one was is that what the report is, or it was just one report that covered all things in CFU?
No, each Caribbean island and CONCACAF and countries around the world would have gone through that report, have the individual report. So it's more or less a forensic study that was done.
And I ask this because in Jamaica, I mean, and this is probably part of the issue, there has been nothing publicly about this ECHO report. I don't know if people in Trinidad, the general football in public, or it is just the federation and the persons within the federation, because I suppose based on what you're saying, it would expose flaws in the leadership structure of the football. So it would be to their benefit to not share the report with all the stakeholders in the football, which is important because we need to know where the shortfalls are as stakeholders so we can be a part of the change. I don't know how you feel about that, but that's the sentiment I'm getting, because except when Andre and I spoke, I hear nothing about no ECHO report in Jamaica.
And the thing about that, man, is that the report was done, and I'm sure for Jamaica as well, but why would you want to keep that secret? And as I told Andre, I think it's a report that should have been made public. All right? Should have been made public because, and the thing is, I think it's not a question of blame should go only here or blame should go only there. There's a lot of blame to go around. Having said that, if you want to move forward, you have to look at where you've been. And I think it's right to let the public see. And as you say, everybody, in terms of the stakeholders, it's a chance for the stakeholders to say, look, I can play my part in moving things forward. The height of lunacy is doing the same thing over and over and expecting a different report. So to be honest, I think the report should be made public.
So one of the things that seems to happen is in the region, if you criticize someone, a behavior, it doesn't matter, you're automatically seen as an enemy. In business, I run a football club, and there's a lot of criticism, sometimes from people who know what they're talking about, and sometimes from people who don't know what they're talking about. But at the end of the day, you use it to become better, right? Criticism is a good thing, in my opinion. I think if there's no criticism, if you offer a product and there's no criticism of that product, then there's no way for you to know how you could improve that product. And unfortunately, it seems as though criticism in the region is taken as a negative thing, and all of a sudden you become the enemy if you're making a criticism. It sounds like it's a report that people should look at and say, okay, this is how we could become better. Because I think management, I don't know if this was on your show, but I remember hearing, I believe it was the GenSec for Jamaica, said that they signed an agreement with FIFA recently to become the model MA of the region. You remember hearing something like that?
Yes.
Right?
He did. Yes. Yeah.
Yeah.
The new Gen set.
And look, when you hear those things, and what I don't know if it's happening, if we are having those conversations, because there aren't any there's not much communication, that comes out. But when you hear that, you can think that Jamaica is a priority, right? You can think Jamaica is a priority for the governing body.
You know what I think, though, Andre. Sorry to interject, but let's tell you what I think. For some reason, I believe if the federation in CFU all took this report, sat down together, and brainstormed a comprehensive plan together. I mean, everything must be contextualized because different population size, different resources. I think that kind of thing would be more constructive if we get ideas from Trinidad. Trinidad get ideas from us. The St. Lucians get some, and everyone has an input. And then a collective, comprehensive plan is outlined where Trinidad follows certain things. And I think that would be better. This idea for me that Jamaica is supposed to be the model and saying it is pointless, because I mean, wouldn't it be better if all of us are looking better at the same time? Then I look better and you get a picture of how better it's supposed to be and try to be that. And that's where I have my biggest challenge with CFU is that instead of us coming together and trying to make the product better for all of us, each one wants to be better so the others can look at them.
So Dion, what is that report, that analysis says about strategic planning? And in your previous role, I mean, is there a strategic plan?
Did you? Right. So I'm seeing a question here from Kendall Rez. Dion, did you inherit a strategic plan, or did you create one during your tenure as TD? In spite of pandemic restrictions, had one to present to your successor? Right. So that's a great question, Kendall. So a strategic plan, and it's a question that I asked when I came in as technical director. It's a question I asked even to Anton Cornell, who was the technical director before, and he said to me there was one that he had promised to send to me, which he never did. But in terms of thinking of a way forward, and I just want to repeat, semantics, man, I totally agree with you. Why should we want to operate differently? Because if we work together as a Caribbean, FIFA will have to take note, because this is the Caribbean countries that are made up of many countries, Caribbean region made up of many countries, saying, look, we want to move forward. So in terms of...
and by the way, not to interrupt you, we vote as a block in FIFA, right? We get together to vote. Is that correct?
Yes. That's a great question. I know back in certain times we did. I know Jack Warner would wanted us to vote as a block, although each Caribbean country has their own vote, so to speak. But that's a great question. I'm not 100% sure, Andre, how the Caribbean voted.
Okay.
But go back
go ahead. You're making your point about the strategic plan.
But based on the strategic plan, that is something I think it's. Let me answer you another way. The General Secretary now of CFU, who was also at one point the General Secretary of the Trinidad and Tobago Football Association, he teaches strategic planning in the Football Association. At the University of the West Indies. So again, I believe that a strategic plan was done. But what happens, I think this is wrong, in the TTFA, when somebody comes along, whether it's technical director, general secretary, they come with ideas, and when they leave with their ideas. So there's not something there that is put in the institution that can move forward, which I think is very, 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 very bad. We have to think of, this is what I'm doing is for me. It's not for me, it's for the country. And if I'm moving on, I should leave it there, right? Which, and to answer Kendall's question, what I try to do, and I came up with a group of people. I came up with a group of people who wanted to help Trinidad and Tobago footballs in all different aspects: governance, sports science, the technical, the tactical, coach education. And this was a group of people that agreed to do this pro bono, free of charge, for the Football Association. The normalization committee, who we know is in place now in Trinidad and Tobago, was aware of this group, and now I can't say what has happened moving forward.
It's having a strategic plan.
The normalization
Allow me for a minute, management, before we move from here. How important it is. Having a strategic plan is important, but is it just as important how it is put together? Is it important that we have the right stakeholders involved in it, the business sector, the universities, the different regions in the country, the leaders of the different regions? Is that just as important as having a plan? Because if I have a plan that I put together, what is the incentive for you to support my plan? And that might be where we're having trouble with people coming together, right? Because I think we communicate, but it doesn't seem that there's good communication. Good communication that starts from a place of respect, involving everybody, allowing everybody to have their say, play their role, and understand the vision properly, right? We use communication to teach so that people understand what's taking place. But is it important that we involve all of these people?
Yeah. Let me see if I can help with that, Andre, because let's use Jamaica I'll use Jamaica as an example, because I know you have said this several times, right? So in Jamaica, you have the head of the Chamber of Commerce, you have the private sector organization, you have parish associations, you have ISA, which is Inter-Secondary School Association, you have the Referees Association, you have the Coaches Association, there is no Player Association, right? So you have all of these things. Now that we have this ECHO report, I'm hoping that the Jamaica Football Federation at least would have received a copy, because they haven't said anything about it.
Well, you have some work to do, man.
Well, yeah. Well, I'm assuming that if Trinidad has it, if it is privy to the people in Trinidad, I don't know that the FA there has it. The Jamaica Football Federation somehow would have at least heard about it. All right. Now you're outlining some of the things that were on it, which includes talent identification and development and all of those things. I didn't capture all of them. Now, wouldn't it be better, like Andre is saying, if you got all the stakeholders together, sat down, and then you create the plan, than for 3 or 5 persons having the report, sit in some office somewhere, create a plan, and then go to the stakeholders and say, here is our plan. Why don't you come and join us? I think that's what Andre is saying, right? That shouldn't the plan start with meeting with all the stakeholders and creating that plan, which would include the school associations, the parish associations, the head of the academies across, and maybe it's going to be a big meeting, probably 60 persons, and that maybe too many ideas come in. And then you probably do it by region. Say, now that we know all 60 stakeholders, we have the businesses, we have the security, we have government, we have entertainment, we have high schools, we have primary schools. Now that we have a stakeholder from everywhere, we're going to sit and they will come back and report to you. Shouldn't that be how the plan is formulated? Instead of like 6 or 5 persons within the FAs or the association making the plan and trying to get people to buy in. That's what you're asking earlier, Andre.
Yeah. That's what I'm asking, because one of the things is, and before you answer, Dion, is a lot of times I read an article this week. I think the head coach was saying that he and his coaching staff have a plan, but it just needs to be financed, right? And there's always conversations about finance. But if you involve the business community, this is what I understand. If you involve the business community in building the plan, then they would know what their commitment to the plan is, right? So when there's a tournament somewhere, we're not going and asking for money arbitrarily. They have already committed to that. They have committed to things within that plan because they were part of it. And I think, for me, I think that would help solve a lot of the problems, because, other people are getting it done.
Yeah.
I think it will be wise to get everybody, all the stakeholders, whether you get 40, 50, 60 people involved. And because a strategic plan is not something you do overnight. It's something that takes some fleshing out, right? Takes some fleshing out, but you need to get everybody on board. And just to allude to what you just said, Andre, in terms of getting, once you have things laid out up front, it will be easier to get the funding, because that would have been planned for. If you want X amount of practice games or to attend X amount of tournaments for the year, that would have already been known. All right. So a strategic plan can be for 3 years. It can be for 5 years. Right. It has to be something that you got to get all the stakeholders involved.
Yeah. I think that's how it has. All the stakeholders must be involved. Now, imagine I walk up to you and I say, Dion, you have all the resources you need to address the present problem, not just to qualify for 2026, but onward for Trinidad and Tobago's football and Caribbean football. Because we don't want, we have identified some problems. There is a strategic plan that needs to go in place, but what are the immediate, here is what we can do. Like I said, it's overtime. We will not fix all of these issues because some of them are entrenched in Caribbean culture, right? And so the culture also needs to change, because there is, I'm going to prove that the schools in Jamaica are better at football than the schools in Trinidad. I'm going to prove that the schools in Western Jamaica are better than the school on the North Coast. And there is this culture within the Caribbean itself that the territories are supposed to be against each other, right? To prove who is the better territory. We have it. All right. In England, you don't really have territories. You have clubs, right? So you don't have territory, but we are cultured to oppose each other, educate in every way. So there are some long-term fixing of the culture. But what are some of the things that we can do in the short term to begin to set the stage for the bigger changes that needs to take place? Because you're in that position of technical director, some of it may not have worked. People may not have bought into the ideas. But, speaking now from outside of the circle, what are some of the things that, you could say to the people in Trinidad, listen, you can start here. You can start here. You can start here. And if you start here,
I do agree with you. There are things that are entrenched, but at the same time, we have to work together. We have to work together. We must determine what do we want. If you look at it medium from a micro, macro, meso, macro, what do we want for our football? Where do we want to be in 10 years' time? Where do we want to be in 15 years' time? Where do we want to be in 5 years' time? And then work backwards. Because we can't keep, shooting in the dark and saying, look, I'm going to do it. I have all the answers. I don't have all the answers. No one has all the answers. But if we work together, and I love the idea of the Caribbean working together. We have some issues that are very common, right? But you know what is strange? We keep saying, well, we entrenched, but we want to make it to a World Cup. And when we don't make it to a World Cup, we can blame a coach and a current crop of players, but that's not the problem. That's not the problem. I mean, you could bring some of the best coaches here. If they don't have the players to work with and the infrastructure in place, it's not going to work. So I don't think it's a short-term fix. We have to say, bite the bullet a little bit, so to speak, and say, if we want to reach forward, we want to end up, consistently competing in CONCACAF, because we will have to compete with the Panamas, the Guatemalans, the Hondurans, the USAs, the Canadians. We will have to compete with these people, but to consistently compete at a very high level, we have to have certain things in place.
So and when you talk about all the people that we have to compete against, if I look at it right now, at this moment, and we talk about the 2026 World Cup, and we talk about the fact that, okay, the 3 host countries are already qualified, and there's another 3 countries that can qualify from this region, plus 2 in a playoff spot. And we look at that, and we take a picture of the current situation and look at the fact that Jamaica, I believe Honduras, and Panama have already qualified for the group stage of the Gold Cup coming up, right? And the rest of the Caribbean, including Trinidad and Tobago, is trying to get a playoff spot. Is that what we're looking at for the World Cup coming up? Is that a indication of how big of a challenge it is becoming? Because
yes, I would say that, Andre, because we have, when you look at where Jamaica is ranked, Jamaica is now ranked 64th in the world. Trinidad and Tobago is ranked 104. So you need the Gold Cup competition, final competition, as part of your development to make it to the World Cup. Those type of games you need.
Right, but what I'm saying is this. What I'm saying is, if Jamaica, Panama, and I believe Honduras, right now they're ahead of us. They've qualified for the group stage Gold Cup. So they're going to make a case for doing World Cup qualifiers, right? Costa Rica is not going to roll over. They were just at the last World Cup. Okay? Guatemala is not going to roll. So it seems to me as though the mountain is getting higher and higher, right? And the quicker the Caribbean islands get their act together, especially one like Trinidad and Tobago, is the better chance that we have, because we are now fighting for a playoff spot in Gold Cup.
Yeah.
If we don't win the 2 games we have coming up, we have problems. So the mountain just seems to be getting higher.
And I want to talk to a point that Vin Blaine, who I'm glad that is on as well. The process of strategic plan does take place. However, the FA does not follow up due to funding, right? They are not willing to spend. You see, the thing, I want to say, Vin, that in your strategic plan, you need to have funding, right? Marketing, funding, getting resources in that plan as well, because we can't do a plan and then say, how are we going to get money to fund the plan? We have to, in there, you have to plan, how are we going to raise money? How are you going to do merchandising? How are you going to get the TV rights? How are these things going to work? Because you have to get funding. We can't just depend on government all the time.
Yeah. And then Kendall Reyes says, I have 2 that I need to take. Very good. That's a very good answer. You're right. Part of the strategic plan must be the budget or the monetary part of it. But he says that makes sense on paper, speaking about the getting all the stakeholders. But he says, however, many of the stakeholders don't necessarily have the good of football as a whole as their primary interest or motivation. But if we say that they are football stakeholders, aren't we saying that they have some vested interest? Because when we say the stakeholders, we're talking about the football and the stakeholders. When you say the private sector, I mean, maybe not all the persons in the private sector support football, but sponsorship normally comes from the private sector. So there is a part of the private sector that is government. There is a Ministry of Sport in almost every government in the Caribbean. So they have a role. So they are stakeholder. Whether or not they are motivated, it is their, for government, for example, it's a part of their their responsibility as government, and they can't be excluded from the process. So they are stakeholders. I think the issue is not whether they are motivated, is how the leadership of the football can motivate them in the strategic plan.
Look,
And then
and when you involve the stakeholders, there are other benefits besides just the finances. You know, in the private sector, yes, they bring finances to the table, but you know, there's things like volunteers. You know, you have a game, you need volunteers to be involved because they're involved in the process. They have an interest. They will come out and volunteer, whether it's to work the gates or to do this or whatever needs to be done. And I think we're missing a massive opportunity to get more people involved. Look, at the end of the day, I made this point to someone the other day. We all coach football. We all involved in football at some level. And a team would have 20, 22 players that train when the day come, 25. On game day, the manager might select 18, and he put 11 on the pitch. And everybody on the pitch, they have roles and responsibilities, individual roles and responsibilities. And when everybody does their job properly, and with a little bit of luck, you win a football match, right? Like yesterday, man, right? Everybody did their job very well, and the score was 3-1. And even when you bring people off the bench, they know their roles and responsibilities as well. And I don't know why it seems to be perceived as different in administration. It is the same thing, and that's what a strategic plan gives you, a long-term development plan. That's what it gives you. It creates roles and responsibilities for people, because I think FIFA is pretty clear in one of its documents in terms of how the MA should be set up. Okay, they're pretty clear about that. They're pretty clear that you need, you know, you need a national team coach, a men's coach, you need a women's coach, you need a technical department, a finance department, a governance and regulation department, events and competition, commercial department. All of those things are necessary in order for the MA to run properly. And within those, and those are multiple people is required for that. And everybody.
Yeah, go ahead, Andrew. Go ahead.
If we work together and build this plan involving the stakeholders, then we'd have access to people who can add to that. I'm surprised to hear that the past Gen Sec, who's now, and management, you know, I've been trying to get him.
We tried to get him to, because we need to hear from the Gen Sec. What is he doing across the Caribbean where this Echo report is concerned? Because as the Gen Sec, I mean, come on now.
The guy that runs the CFU, I'm surprised to hear that he teaches strategic planning at the University of the West Indies. It's so then we should have one. We should have a potent one that everybody should know about.
Yeah,
but I'm not so sure. So you didn't see one? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah.
No, I didn't see one. I actually asked the question, and I was told that there were actually more than one strategic plan, but I've never seen one. Because one thing that when you're in these meetings with FIFA, one of the things that they always ask you is, where's your strategic plan? You can't just be operating in a vacuum and doing something because you think it's good. It must be part of a strategic plan.
Okay.
So how did they document that in the Echo report? Was that mentioned?
Yeah, so that will have come under management structure and resources, right? Because as I say, the report was forensic, and I'll be honest with you, when I read the report, I was quite sad. But I believe FIFA was being honest based on their survey and the different things that they did to come up with the report, that this is where our football is at. And it was quite depressing to read, actually, to be honest.
Yeah.
But having said that, it told us what were the, if I use this expression, the high-hanging fruit and the low-hanging fruit. What were the things that you don't necessarily need money to fix? You just need organization and planning, right? Because the money will come. You do need money to see a program through, but there are things that we can do without money, and getting the right people involved and getting the right planning and processes in place.
Yeah. I've seen Walter Clapton says, could a strategic plan, and you can take these, Dion, could a strategic plan be created embracing the positives of the other types of football? I think that's what it says. And then it says, how do they all coexist for the benefit of the youth?
And I just need Walter to be clear on his question in terms
Yeah.
of when you say other types of football, are you talking beach football? When you say other types of football, what do you mean by other types of football?
All right, so Walter clarifies that and we'll get to it. And then Stan Cranky says, cricket is the perfect analogy as to how the Caribbean has worked or not worked together. I think the region can share ideas and strategies, but do not see them working as a collective.
Look, Walter says school football and club.
Okay, right. Walter, when he says the different types of football, he's talking about club football, school football. I think that's what he meant.
Right. So again, school football and club football could work together. But if we're in a small country, if you're fighting for the same players, you shouldn't be fighting for the same players. Because we're asking the same players to compete at club, and we're asking the same players to compete at school. We have to determine what is best for the players to give them. We just talked about that 11 months of football, right? What is best for them? Why do we need to play two different competitions? Why can't we just play a proper league system, right? After determining the different levels of the players, so different criteria for the top tier, the second tier, third tier, So for me, we have to determine what is best in terms of getting our players playing in a consistent league, and not just a league for 3 months of the year.
Yeah, and I see Johnny, you're saying that we are forgetting Suriname as they started with a very good process, and you have seen like nations like Suriname, Aruba, Curacao coming to the fore in the last few years, who are now going to be threats to, the Jamaica and the Trinidad, and this is because of their connection with, places like Holland and stuff, and being able to use the resources there. And I hear that Ajax even does work in some of those. In Suriname, I believe. So you have those other nations coming up, that will pose some challenge to the Trinidad and Tobago, and Jamaica. But I always say that I believe that because of the population size that we have, especially and our rich history in the football, we have a lot more success to bank on, and ways of creating the kind of product that is so marketable that it's easier to invest in it because people have seen it work before. We just need proper leadership from the top.
Yeah. Your success in football. That's you have access to a lot of people all around the world with Jamaican heritage.
But I see Dick Davis said that he was asking earlier. Seemed like he's Trini because Darren Davis, he was speaking about the I think he was speaking about Nitro, about recruiting players. I feel like Jamaica has more access to, or more people of Jamaican descent in England than Trinidad, because Nitro, who is a Jamaican, was asking him. There were 8 persons, I believe, who were not born in Trinidad when they played against Thailand.
8 persons
yes.
that were not, yeah.
Right, and he was right. I mean, is that the first time that you have so many not born in Trinidad? And he was also asking, how did the Trinidad population take that?
Well, I think. Let me answer. Like any nation will take it. You want the advantage if you have players, parents, people who have migrated, and they now have kids, first generation kids that are allowed to play for the country. I would say yes, once they're adding and not taking away. Now I'm saying don't just bring them because they're living abroad, but once they meet the criteria, whatever the criteria is, to challenge the local players. And they meet that criteria, yes, take them. Because if you're being developed in Europe, South America, North America, where, for example, Trinidad and Tobago, look how many look how many years we've not had a competitive league going on here. Yes, the COVID, but a lot of countries since after COVID have actually started playing. We are still trying to organize to have a league. They said sometime now in 2023. That is too long. Too many of our players have not been active.
I would say that we need to evolve our thinking around that. And we just need to look at Morocco from the last World Cup. Okay? I believe everybody, right? Majority of the players in that team was not born in Morocco, does not live in Morocco. And they came together, and not only did they make Moroccans happy, they made the entire region. Okay? The entire region was enjoying Morocco's journey through the World Cup to get to, I believe it was a semifinal stage. We have to evolve our thinking, and we have to realize that, look, when somebody half and half make a whole, right? 1 + 1 is 2. So if you have kids that was born outside of the country but born to Trinidad parentage, they're Trinidadians. I mean, that's it. The question becomes, are they good enough to represent the country? Are they better than what we have? And I think we need to evolve our thinking in that regard.
Yes. Most certainly, because that comes down to talent identification. So if we have a scouting network, how do we integrate these players into our national team, and how that is funded? Because we have a number of players who can represent Trinidad and Tobago, male and female, who we just need to have a proper system in place and have these players documented and have an ongoing, how should I say, database on these players, so we know when these players are in their peak. If they're injured, we shouldn't be contacting them. But when are these players in their peak? We should have a database on these players, a constant and current database.
Yeah, when Shaka Hislop was on, he spoke about because I was talking about how many fields were built in Trinidad. I think when he hosted, was it the Under-17 World Cup?
Yeah.
Right. So there were a lot of surfaces that were upgraded and set up really good. But and I know one of the concerns that he had is that there were too many. Trinidad and Tobago, being a small island, didn't need so much money invested in all of these stadiums that are not being used. And just probably if you had less stadium, then keeping them at a high quality would be easier to do, and the resources could have been used in other areas of development. I mean, you're the technical director. I mean, do you have too many, sir? I don't, is it stadiums or mini stadiums? I don't know. Because I know in Jamaica we call some of them mini stadiums. I don't know if the same term is used in Trinidad and Tobago. But what is your take on that? And is that part of the strategic plan in terms of how the venues are managed so that the players can play in the best environment, not just the surface, but the changing rooms and, the facilities, lighting, and people being able to sit comfortably, and parents can come and it's a safe space? Is it too much to manage all of those venues, and it should be less, so that the management of the environment, especially at your under-15 and under-17, it is high quality, because we're preparing kids to play in Europe, that you want them to be used to the high quality environment as early as possible. What are your thoughts on that?
That's a great point, and I'll agree with Shaka in one sense, in that the stadiums are not being used properly. Part of the problem in Trinidad and Tobago is that there's a lot of talk about taking football back to the communities. And when you have football in the communities, people don't necessarily go to the stadiums because the stadiums are not as accessible. Right? So we have to choose when we use the stadiums, but we also have to make sure that nobody wants to go and play a game in an empty stadium. And that has happened many times, even with our pro league. You know, when we had our pro league in Trinidad and Tobago, the stadiums, you don't get much. You get more people attending a high school game. And I'm not sure if it's the same in Jamaica.
Yes.
Than you get going to a pro league team, a pro league game. Right? One, the product is something that people decide, well, they're not going to support. Right? Not many people support the product besides families and close friends. But you want to get the football back in the communities and use strategically when it's the right time to play at the stadium so that players do get experience to what is happening, what it's like playing in a stadium, what it's like playing in front of a big crowd. So maybe it's just a question of how often we do it.
Yeah. Yeah. Andre, go ahead.
One of the things, Dion, is when football, you know, even on when we had Shaka on, he raised the question as to why would he get involved in Trinidad football? Why would he leave here to go invest the time in Trinidad football? Is that correct, management?
Yes, yeah.
And
because we're asking him about all of these former players. I think
right.
One is in Australia coaching.
Dwight York is coaching in Australia.
Right. Yeah.
And I speak to people from time to time, and sometimes you try to encourage people to get involved, and they say, I've had enough of Trinidad football. My disagreement on that day with Shaka, but you know, he was a guest at the time, so I didn't want to. But my disagreement was Trinidad allowed a lot of these guys to play World Cup football, right? And I disagree with any of them that says they're fed up, that they don't want to get involved. Okay, I disagree with that because it gave you a platform to have the best. This last World Cup is 832 people, right? 28 or 26 from America, I think it's 28 players from 26 players from America, 26 from Morocco, 26 from here, 832 people in the world got that special opportunity. Okay, so I think for that, we can't be fed up. We can't be fed up. I have, for me, I have friends that say to me, why you even bother with this? Right? It's not going anywhere. But for me, my entire life, I have allowed my adversity in life to inspire me to go on and achieve things that others would think impossible. And I bring that to anything that I do. And I don't think that Trinidad, I do think that Trinidad should be, can be, in the top echelon of football in CONCACAF, competing every cycle as often as possible to go to the World Cup. And if that's not the case, I mean, look, we need our moment. And if we don't get these things right, we wouldn't have our moment. And 2026 is one of those moments that we should not and cannot let go by. Jamaica shouldn't, right? And whoever else in the region that wants it, it's right in our backyard. More teams are getting opportunities. Potentially 8 teams could go, right? The way we qualified in 2006, there's 2 teams could go that route. So how could we not be able to get together and make the investment? And it's not an investment in football, it's an investment in our people, right? It's an investment in our people. And in order for it to happen, I think we must involve the private sector in the strategic plan part of it. They must play a prominent role in it, and we must improve transparency and accountability and all of the things, continue to improve those things so that everybody is excited to be part of it. There's too many people saying that they don't care about football and what happens in Trinidad and Tobago. There's just too much. People who been given a life, you know. I don't know. I've not heard Dwight York say that, but you know, he had a career that started with Trinidad football. If I understand the story, he was seen playing for Trinidad by Aston Villa. I don't know if that's how it goes. So Trinidad football has given a lot to people. Yes, there's a lot of things to fix, but they all need to get involved and try to make it better. We can't have one person running or two people or three people or four people running football. It just wouldn't work.
Yeah, but when I listen to you though, Andre, and I listen to you, Dion, I listen to Shaka, and oh geez, I forgot my fan that we interviewed. Remind me of his name.
You catch me. I'll tell you just now. Go ahead. Go ahead.
Right. DJ was into music, so forgot his name, but he was at the World Cup, right? When I listen to, so we all have this passion. All right.
And you gotta correct me. You gotta help me. When I say Trinidad, I don't say Trinidad and Tobago.
Yeah, you have to say that because you know we got.
I didn't say Trinidad and Tobago.
I'm making sure I said Trinidad and Tobago. I don't know about you. They can blame me, you know.
That's all right.
Yeah.
Dion, help me.
Yeah. So because my thing is just listening to, because you said that when I was right, so you'd have been the technical director. Because I assume that you're no longer the technical director, but there's all of this. Is there still a pathway though for you to have a role in the football? And I keep on saying not to qualify for 2026. And I keep on saying this because there's under 17 World Cup, under 20 World Cup that we need to keep qualifying for. So every World Cup cycle, I think Jamaica and Trinidad and other nations in the Caribbean can have. If you don't make the Senior World Cup, you should qualify for the under 20. If you don't make the under 20, you should qualify for the under 17. It says that there is progression. When multiple cycles of World Cups pass, you don't qualify for under 17, you don't qualify for under 20, you don't qualify for the seniors, something is off. When I go back to the last under 20 tournament, I don't think Trinidad came out of their zone. I don't even think so.
No.
I think we played around a 16 game. We came out of the group and played around a 16 game.
Yeah.
But 3 teams coming out of the group, yeah.
Right. And Jamaica did, and we had players who came in from championship clubs, one from a Premier League club in our under 20 team, and we struggled, right? Now we have an under 17, and it would be sad again to see the Caribbean teams again struggling. Again struggling. It is so we have to find a way of creating progression. Simply put, listen, if we miss 2026, we should have an under 20 team so we can say, well, the under 2020 team went to the World Cup. That means we are preparing for 2030. It cannot be that you miss 2022, you don't have an under 20 team that qualifies, and your under 17 team don't qualify. Where are the players going to come from? You don't qualify for the Olympic, you don't qualify for under 20 because Costa Rica, Mexico, and those teams are qualifying for those tournaments. It means that they have more player turnover than you. So if in 4 years' time, they're going to have some 24 years old who already qualify for the World Cup. And that's why I liked what you said about from the under 15 level. This needs to start. And I think Shaka said it. We have to go beyond. And I want all of these teams to be in 2026, but we have to go beyond 2026. We have to look at these. All right, when this under 17 tournament is finished, when is the next one starting? There should be a plan afoot already for the next under 20 tournament because you failed.
So dear, let me ask you this. One of the things that that happens in almost all of the islands in the region, coaches get hired when a tournament comes around, as opposed to being a full-time coach. How do you think that affects the football?
Well, first to begin, one of the mistakes that we keep making over and over, and I know here in Trinidad and Tobago, I'm not sure about Jamaica, is that every time there's an under 17 tournament or under 20 tournament, we always doing screening, always selecting players within the same year. And it's not done prior. I think that is completely wrong. Therefore, the players they will never have the cohesiveness, even though you bring back top players. It's always trying to get players to understand each other in the middle of a tournament, when that understanding and that cohesiveness should already be there. It comes back to listening to management, just not to listen to you speak. It all comes down to planning. If we know, and FIFA normally tells you way in advance when these tournaments are, we have to strategically decide if we're going to take part in the tournament, where the players coming from, who is starting to work with these players from 2 years out, 3 years out, who is working with these players. If we don't do that, we'll keep doing the same thing over and over, having players, in the same year trying to make it and see if we can qualify, and a lot of times we don't. And it's not because we don't have the resources, it's that we're not doing what it is. I would always remain optimistic with Trinidad football. I would always be optimistic. But what are we doing with the planning? What are we doing in terms of planning? Right? If we have they're going to have an under 15 tournament every year. What are we doing with the 13s and 14s? And there should be a full-time coach. I know there's a question of, I had this discussion with Anton Cornell, and he was talking about the resources. And so, again, part of planning is finding the right coach, the coach who's age appropriate, and giving that coach and staff a chance to work with the players, not just from a technical, tactical point of view, but from a physiological point of view. Let me bring something up here. One of the problems that we had in Trinidad and Tobago, and we missed a couple under 15 tournaments, is that when we did decide to go, that there was funding for it, scientifically, it would not have made sense sending the players, because it takes 6 to 7 weeks for physical adaptation to take place. Those players, because of the COVID, have not been training. So again, who's doing the planning? And it's not just, and I love what you were saying earlier, Andrew and Manningsman, in terms of bringing everybody on board. You bring in the experts, the psychologists, the strength and conditioning coach, to say, this is the time that we need to prepare the players, right? Football is an anaerobic sport. So there's a physiological side of it, component, along with teaching techniques and tactics and strategies. So we have to think of long-term, what are we doing, and getting the right staff, getting people who are age appropriate. And that's both on the male side and on the female side.
Yeah. You alluded to this. I know Stan Kroenke is talking at this. I think he's saying that there are many players in the diaspora to choose from for both countries, even if they do not qualify for these tournaments. So what he's saying is that if you don't qualify for the under 17 and under 20s, you can always just go to the diaspora to select players to qualify your senior team. But what I'm saying, though, is that won't be forever. There has to be a strategic plan to develop football on the local soil. In as much as you can do this, you still have to develop the players there. You can't just, like, we are going to Jamaica, going into the under 17 World Cup, and we just started our camps 2 weeks ago. After the schoolboy football competition, we started for a tournament in February. And you have a Christmas break, and your squad is not finalized yet either. So it's exactly what you're saying. And we knew about this. We knew about this from 2020.
Same problem. It's the same situation in Trinidad and Tobago. The under 17s just started to get prepared just after the tournament. The high school tournament. So again, it comes back to, are we preparing players for a high school tournament, or we're preparing them to play in CONCACAF? I think that you should take the players, the Trinidad and Tobago Football Association should have taken those players out of the league and prepared the players by giving them the right exposure, the right type of practice games and so. Now there's a big argument of, no, the players have to stay and represent their schools, which I think is wrong. If the level is not high enough, why are they staying in the schools? And there's a big argument about this. But I still think the Trinidad and Tobago Football Association should have taken the players out of the high school league, right? Which gives other players a chance. It helps widen your base, right? And give those players who you think are going to represent in that tournament, give them exposure playing different tournaments around the world. USA, they find the money. Everybody talks about, yes, they're more resourceful, but again, it's planning.
Yeah, I think the Wales football did that, and when we had the person in charge who was in charge of the whole talent identification process, he spoke about that. And Gareth Bale, Joe Allen, Aaron Ramsey came through that system. So what they did, they had regional tournaments and academy, like almost academy, where the elite players had elite training, and they took the Arsene Wenger idea where their best coaches were coaching at the lowest levels. Now, again, it's a shift in culture because our best coaches in the Caribbean wants to coach at the highest level. And they complain that when they get the players, they're not properly developed. But they don't want to go to the lowest levels to develop the players. They're leaving the lowest level licensed coaches with the least experience to coach at the most important stage. So when the players get to 17 and 18, they don't know the pillars of defending or attacking because they had the coaches with the lowest qualifications coaching them at the most important stage of their careers and the years when they learn the key principles. So that's part of the issue. So they changed your whole thing. They went to the Euros, they qualified for the World Cup, and you saw what they produced. So I don't want school football to stop. What I am saying is that the players can train in the different regions. Say Trinidad and Tobago has 8 regions. Every weekend, they come to those places to train, and then they go and play with their school teams. You will have them for the games, because we want them to get games. So we're not going to play the regional competition at the same time as the school competition. But we are going to prepare them. We're going to hire coaches in the national programs. So we have 4 confeds: Eastern, Western, South Central, and Kasafa. So all the parishes fall into one of those 4 confeds. So you find 4 coaches to put in those 4 regions. And you say to them, listen, these are our 30 best players in this region at under 15. Every weekend, they come to a living camp and they train. They can play for their schools, but this is where we train them. Now the school, if they are the 30 elite, they can fit into a school program. They can fit into a school program because they're already ahead of the other school kids. The idea that they train with the schools, then to come and play for the national program, it has to be reversed. They need to train with the national academy and then go and play for the school. It cannot be the school that is preparing them to play for the national. It must be the national preparing your elite players to play for their schools.
But then you have a problem now of once those players are being developed by the elite coaches, when they go back to the schools, the level of coaching is different. Sometimes they play the players in different positions. So there must be an understanding with the national coaches, right? As you say, in the parishes, or we have the zones, and working with those coaches, those high school coaches, saying, look, this is where I'm going to be using this player in the national team. Can this player play in that position in your school? That doesn't happen here. There's that type of correlation between coaches does not happen.
Yeah, I'm going to give you an example of this.
Happen.
I don't know if you know Craig Butler, right? Craig Butler runs an academy. Leon Bailey, Andre, you know him, and he always says this, and many people are challenged by it. But the concept is true. He says that I don't allow other persons to coach my players, and that's in Jamaica. So because he's preparing his players to get transferred in Europe, he has been there and he knows what it takes. He's saying, if you coach them, you're going to teach them different principles and fundamentals than what I am teaching them. So if they're a Phoenix player and they are going to play, they have to play the way that I coach them, because that is what is necessary for them to play in Europe. The concept, so the concept is good, which is what you're saying. The national academies or zonal academies or regional academies need to sit down with these coaches and say, listen, our central defensive midfielder play this particular way. We will allow them to come and play in the school, but we don't want you to play him at center back.
But man, is it more than that though? And Dion, it's so for the past decade in working with young players, I've often said to them, if you want to go play high school, that's fine, you can go do that, but it's a waste of time coming here, right? Because I am educating players. Okay, it's a process. It takes time. It's daily planning and working, and players don't understand concepts and ideas in one training session or more, right? Intensity in the training session. There's a lot of things that, you know, you just the idea of having to a system that is based on merit. You get what you earn, right? You have an environment that you create. And then a player goes to high school, at least here, and you have an individual who means well, who wants to give the kids an opportunity, but may not be a football person, right? So they're playing 2-3 games a week. The training sessions, they are what they are. And it's not designed in a way to produce elite players, right? To develop elite players. So they spend all this time in that environment, and then they come back to you and almost have to unlearn the habits that they have picked up in those environments. So from my perspective, developing players is a very sophisticated thing. And I think Craig is right. When you're trying to get players to a certain level, it's a behavior, it's a work ethic, it's the information, it's the total environment that you create that makes that player thinks like a professional, right? And if you start to go back and forth in between environments that does not have that standard, I think it makes it difficult for everybody involved.
Yeah. Go ahead, Dion.
It comes back to the point that we're making, you know, who develops the players? Because young players try to respect all coaches. They'll try to respect their coach in the high school. They'll try to respect their coaches at the club. When we look at the players in Europe, the club, because they have very, very, and management, you alluded to just now, because they have very high level coaches, those players, the message is not too far apart between playing for club and playing for country. The message is not too far apart. But when we talk about high school, again, no disrespect to the high school coaches, who, Andrew said, are trying their best, but are doing what? Are trying to win. They're more or less putting together a team of players to try to win a competition. Whereas in the academies, you're talking about developing the players to move them on.
Yeah.
And the word development has become almost like a marketing word. I remember there were times that I put players in positions that I know they're going to fail, right? And you see them struggle, and they learn from that. And that may result in you not winning a game, right? But you do that because it's in that player's best interest.
That's good. That's good. I really like that. But you know, we have a footballer in Jamaica, very good, called to the national program and went to Europe. And one of the struggles he had, and many people mentioned it, was he never did any defensive work, and that led to him struggling to keep a contract and get playing time. And though many in Jamaica, this is recent, thought he would have been one of the next big things, quote unquote, coming out of Jamaica. He did an interview and he said that in high school, he was never taught or told that he needed to defend. Because here's what happened with high school football. When you're the star, you're treated, you're coached. I don't want to say different, which is I think is the problem with high school football. If you are developed, if you pick the elite players in the national academy system because they are better, they are being afforded better training. When they go back into that school team, they are going to be treated differently, which is where some bad practices creep into them and habits. So it's such a complex situation where there has to be a conversation with the coaches where listen, we know you want to win, but we are setting the condition for our elite player to play with you. He needs to play this way. Can you play? I don't know how, because then those coaches are going to tell you, I don't care about that, because if I don't win, I'm going to lose my job. Who is going to pay me? Because they don't coach in high schools for free. They apply for the job and they are paid sometimes by the past students large sums of money to get the team to the title. So
that is so true.
So what am I going to do? You're telling me to develop players, and then when I develop them and I don't win, I lose my job. Are you going to take care of me? So what do I do as a coach?
And the players trying to please two masters. Because if you don't listen to the high school coach, you're not going to make the team. So you want to do what he says. So that's why I'm saying the players should be developed. If these are national players and they're going to have a few from different schools, they should be developed separately. We can't be doing the same thing over and over and expecting the players to play at CONCACAF. So it comes back to what is more important. We have to first determine what is more important. And until we answer that question, they're going to be fighting to please both masters, so to speak.
Yeah, what do you say about that, Coach Andre? Because you know, the high school coach is telling you, listen, I'm setting up my team to win this game. Because if I don't win, I'm going to be fired.
And you can't, I don't know that you can be in an ideal world, you would want to have an environment that would do exactly what you were suggesting, but that's not going to happen, right? For all the reasons.
Unless we take Dion's plan, which is they don't even play high school football, they play an academic competition.
I can see that because, you know, did Phil Foden play high school?
Yeah.
You know,
and that is true because
Gavi just played for Barcelona. Did he play high school?
In fact, in England, they will tell you if you're playing high school football, it's because you're not good.
You're not good.
and which is happening in America now, because, you know, with the MLS next, if you're playing,
that's where the best players are playing.
Exactly, if you're playing college football now, they're saying that you know, if you're good enough, you would be in MLS next. The fact that you're here, we don't need to look at you.
The argument that you always hear is Dwight York played in the secondary schools league. Russell Atlee played in the secondary school league. And my argument always is they had no choice. That was what was available in Trinidad and Tobago. So they did what was available. So we have to do something a little bit different and know that the players are going to benefit. Because I can tell you, if you're a high school coach, you look at it one way. If you're a national coach, you look at it another way. But having said that, there are coaches who coach both national team and high school at the same time. So they're wearing the same hat, the two hats.
Yeah. So
Dion, let me ask you, and I know just now we probably we've been on for a couple of hours. What is your how do you see the national setup at the moment in terms of the future? We have and the 2026 World Cup. Are we in? Do we have? What do we need to do to improve the current situation? Do we have the right people in place? Do we? I don't know if that's a fair question to you, and you could
I'll answer it
find
this
the
way.
answer, but
I'll answer in this way. The last tournament that the senior national team played, I would have loved to see. I thought the philosophy was a little bit off. We went to that tournament to try to win the tournament.
That's a King's Cup.
The King's Cup, yeah. We went to that tournament to try to win the tournament. When I thought we should have taken younger players, knowing that in 4 years' time, these players will be the players who will be eligible to play for the country. If you take the senior players now, the older players now, then what are you preparing them for? As opposed to just carrying them for a trip.
what the thing is this, right? And sometimes, and we need to be mindful of this. Older and younger players. First, we like where the younger players playing. That's one. But some of the best players in the last World Cup, Luka Modric, 37 years old, right? We have to pick the best players at the moment. We have to pick the best young players, and we can't just dismiss the older players because they need a support structure, right? If you put a team on the pitch and they don't have the right experience around, then maybe that could cause the team to not function, right? It makes it a difficult experience for the younger players, an impossible experience. So to get the right balance is important. But where are our young players playing at the moment?
And that's a great question. Well, if we look at Trinidad and Tobago, our players are not playing at present, right? Which is quite sad, So we need to get that league up and running. And hopefully, I know it's very, very difficult now for our players to play in the Premiership. It's almost impossible for our players to play in the Premiership now because our team is ranked 104. FIFA is the English FA is saying that you have to play in the Premiership, you have to be ranked 50 and below. We are 104. So our players playing in the Premiership right now, it's almost impossible. Right? Until we improve our rankings drastically. But can we get into some other top leagues in the world? That's the question. And our players are not getting into those leagues. They're not even getting into the MLS.
Why do you think that is? Why do you think that is? I can't remember the last time, besides there's a young boy at I think he's at Minnesota, playing in the MLS Next Pro 2 team. I can't remember the last time we had a player sign a contract to the MLS or somewhere.
I'll answer you 2 things. One, I just spoke to a top agent, a top agent, and that top agent just said they're not interested in players from Trinidad and Tobago because the players are not at the level where they're supposed to be. Because the sort of standing league that we had here in Trinidad and Tobago, sort of a fill the gap league, the level of it, the agent is even telling the players, don't send me footage from that league. You got to be playing at a higher level to be considered. I remember talking to one of the owners of the MLS teams, and what they were saying is that our players currently are not professional enough. They are not professional enough to move on, to carry a brand. So what are the MLS teams doing now? They're bringing in players from England, younger players, to represent them who are more professional. Not only better technically, tactically, but they're also better in terms of carrying a brand. They're much more professional in their approach to training and everything like that. So we have a long way to go. Our players, yes, we have had most of our players inspired by the Dwight Yorks and the Latipes and the Shaka Hislaps. They have to up their game. We are not at the level we're supposed to be right now.
We need change, or we need not necessarily change, but we need to get the ball rolling sooner rather than later. Is it rolling already? I mean, you on the ground, is something happening?
That's a great question. I know that there are plans to get a league in place, and they're still trying to iron out some things that I felt should have been easily ironed out, but they're still trying to work it out. But we need to get our players playing. All
Yeah,
right.
but
We need
what about this though? Sorry, Dion, to cut it, but I've seen even during the pandemic when we never had leagues, we have several agents. I know, like there's a Damani, Ralph, Nazir Gray, Christopher Hill, Kevin Cohen. These guys, we had like Kahim Paris, who was young when he left, like 17, Krista J. Daly, Norman Campbell, Tyreek McGee, all of these young Jamaica, Ronaldo Biggs, Peter McGregor, all of these guys were coming out of high school football, and somehow there was an agent who was able to get them into the Slovenian league and just other leagues. And you saw with Shamar Nicholson, he has made some transition, moved to Russia. I, I, I don't know if because I don't follow TNT's football, but I don't hear a lot of these stories as well. So even in the absence of a league, what about the top quality players coming out of the high school football? Who, because maybe because our Jamaican, we like Tyreek McGee played for Jamaica, the senior team, and Kahim Paris when they were 17 and 18, which helped with them moving overseas. But a lot of that move had to do with an agent representing them and saying to a club, listen, trust me, this player is good. You need to look at him. You need to, and they went, they proved themselves, and most of them have signed contracts. Isn't that a way it could work? I know that Sancho is an agent as well, but I don't know if he works with talent or, maybe he's international. He doesn't work with talent from Trinidad. But maybe they need to find agents who can sell some of these players.
We have to definitely bridge that gap. We have to bridge that gap. And as you said, there are a number of young players who are showing that potential, right? And they need to get that recognition, all right? But you also have to, I'm going to say it this way, you have to be a professional before you're a professional. So you have to be showing the signs that these agents want to take the time and put that interest in you, which is not happening right now in Trinidad and Tobago. Not many players are getting that opportunities. And of course, some of them might be saying, well, why should I try hard? Because I'm not seeing an opportunity. There's not a clear pathway to becoming a professional player. So I think it takes two hands to clap, but the players need to be doing much more.
Okay.
Dion, you did a pilot project the other day that some players from my club participated in from a couple of my teams, and you had players from all around the world on a Zoom call. I don't know if you want to talk about that a little bit, but one of the things that was striking is the difference in the ability to communicate. The difference between the players that from abroad and the local players in the region. And I'm sure you'd agree that's an important part of being a professional. I don't know if you want to talk on that a little bit.
So to the listeners, the program I did is that I got players from 10 different countries, ages 12 to 14, along with some academy coaches from the States, from England, from Spain, to talk to show, do video analysis and have the players analyze the game. And to your point, Andre, in terms of development, our players, again, when we're talking about developing the player, are we developing the whole person? The player that not only can show signs of doing things tactically well, technically well, but can also speak well and carry about themselves well. Right? Are we developing the players that way? People talk about Dwight York, but when Dwight York went to Aston Villa, Dwight York was taught how to conduct an interview, and he had to do certain classes, how to carry about himself as a professional player. That's also part of development, not just what happens on the field, but off the field as well. So in terms of these opportunities and in terms of development, what are we doing to develop these players? We have to look at it holistically. Who are the professionals we are bringing around these players to help them develop?
And I think I've done now 3 or 4 of those things with you, and and I do them, I involve my players because I see them as important, right? To be able to be in a conversation and hear from somebody that they otherwise wouldn't hear from. I'm not worried about, you know, that this person might have a bigger status. I'm just interested in exposing the young people to things that can help improve them. And for a lot of these things, for me, they've been valuable for the young player, and they have benefited from it. Have you tried to get an opportunity to be part of the development of football, doing stuff like that, or would you be interested, more importantly, in having an academy again?
That is something that I have been asked, to be quite honest with you. I have been asked if I would reconsider open back an academy, and it's something I'm thinking about. I do have other offers, I have to be honest, on the table, but it is something that I am thinking about in terms of, in the meantime, can I do something to help Trinidad and Tobago? And because I have a little more insight into what is needed to developing a top player. It's no reinventing the wheel. There are things that can help to produce these top players, but we have to. It will take funding, but it's not something that you want to do on your own. It's something that has to be done collectively.
I would say this to you as you try to make that decision. There's a saying: the man that builds his own castle is richer than the man that is given a castle.
I would agree. I would certainly agree. I would certainly agree. I would certainly agree.
So just remember that.
Yeah. Yes. Well, what a wonderful conversation. Lots of perspective, food for thought, and just to let you know that Darren Davis said that the person you're speaking of earlier was Malik Khan.
Malik Khan, yeah. The name just didn't come to mind at the moment. Malik Khan, yeah.
Right.
He played with the under-20 team. Had a good tournament.
Yeah. Yeah, and then Coach Boris Johnson, a former Jamaica national, says one of the biggest problems is the grassroots football in the region need to look at and taken seriously from a technical and tactical standpoint. Then he says the region need to look at what is required to play in top league. In terms, I think it should have been in terms of players' development. Yeah, which is what we have been saying, Coach Boris. So I think because they came on late, but that is exactly what we have been saying. Just, are you preparing players to win? Are you developing them to compete at the CONCACAF level and to ply their trade in the highest leagues across the world? My thing is that I hope that, because that it's never about trying to tear down or to criticize, and all of us take responsibility. Once you're involved in football, the state of football is for all of us to be involved in it, and we may not have contributed significantly to the problem, but maybe by not doing anything, we are a part of the problem. And if we are, then we must always seek to be a part of the solution. And what we have done today is to share thoughts. And I'm very sure that Dion, Andre, if the door is open, they are willing to be engaged in the pathway to make the football better. Because that's it. The conversation is, here are our thoughts. Because we want to see Trinidad and Jamaica and other territories playing at the World Cup level. It would be good to see Jamaica and Trinidad going to the senior. 2 other Caribbean countries qualifying for the under-20. 2 different Caribbean countries qualifying for the under-17. 2 qualifying for the women's senior, under-17. And imagine if that happened.
Imagine Trinidad beating Jamaica with 5 billion people watching.
I am telling you. No, just imagine in 2026, Jamaica and Trinidad comes out of their zone.
Yeah.
And I tell people, it's not impossible. When you look at what Morocco did, when you look at what, remember we said this, Croatia, Japan, and Jamaica were in the same zone at the World Cup for the first time. Croatia, who had broken away from Yugoslavia, qualified as an independent nation for the first time in 1998. Japan qualified in 1998 for the first time. Japan has not missed a World Cup. Croatia in that time has 2 third place and 1 second place finish at the World Cup. Jamaica has not been back.
And management, when I watch the World Cup, there's so much inspiration you can get from that. If you in football and you watch, look, 24% of the games in the World Cup were considered upsets. Morocco beating Portugal, Morocco beating Spain, Croatia beating Brazil, Saudi Arabia beating
Argentina.
Right?
Australia.
Those are stories that you can look at and it could make you believe, it could encourage you, it could what is so different about these people that could make them not just qualify. You know how outrageous it is for Saudi Arabia to put the effort in that they put in to beat Argentina?
Yeah.
That must be, and I understand. I believe I understand that. I understand that because when you, for me, my experience has been you're in a space, you're among people with more resources, they're bigger clubs, they have access, and you still go and you put up a fight, right? And what make you able to put up a fight? Because you have ambition to begin with. You willing to put in the work, you have the commitment, right? And of course the information is important, and you go out and you prepare and you go and you. So I understand that, and when I see that, I feel good about that. It's easy for me to, I said to somebody that when Croatia played Brazil, that Brazil had to be very, very good to beat Croatia, and they weren't very, very good, and they lost to Croatia, and those are massive. Croatia has about 4 million people or something like that. It's a very small, population, and to get the results that you just pointed out, it's got to inspire you. We've been there before. Trinidad been there before. Jamaica been there before, and there are others who been there, want to go back, who haven't been there. But we've got to make sure that we are there, that Jamaica is there, that Trinidad is there, and how is that going to happen, right?
And the truth of it, with Trinidad and Jamaica, that wave, if you like, that wave that we were on for 2006 Jamaica in 1998, that wave would have brought resources and finance. What was done with that finance, or what could have been done with that finance to help us continue along that vein? Because I know for Trinidad and Tobago, there was a lot of monies that were raised and came to the Football Association. Where that money is a whole other story.
Well, that's a whole other show. if we start getting to that, I'm telling you, we're going to have to go on for probably 4 more hours, because the same question has been asked even today. What happened to all the money from qualifying for night? Not only that, remember, Jamaica went to 2 Gold Cup finals recently, right? So that's second place twice. We finished, we went to semifinals, got knocked out, quarterfinals, and all of that, and we didn't even qualify with almost the same group of players for the core of that team that went to 2 Gold Cup finals did not qualify for the World Cup.
Quite frankly, it's obscene, right, that you all didn't qualify. But the players will have access to, it's hard to explain that.
Yeah. But I want to thank you so much. It's such a great conversation. We hope to have you back on to get, one of the problems people are having with me and Andre is that they want the programs to be like 30 minutes.
Yeah.
Right. It's so hard to lock them into 30 minutes or 1 hour with all the information, because this is football. And so we have gone 2 hours, but we hope that we can have you back to go further into these discussions, as I'm going to do some investigation about the Echo report, see if I can put my hand on it to see what was said about this, the state of Jamaica's football. And then I'd love for you to hear that as well, and we can have a discussion around that at some point. But I'm going to do my own investigation. But I want to thank you so much, Dion, for being a part of this. It was such a joy having you, and always, Andre, it's always good doing this with you. And so I'm going to throw it over to you, because you're, I'm just your co-host. You're the host, you know what I'm saying? I'm just
You always the host.
no, everyone knows, like, they look at my background, they see curtains and fireplace. They look at yours, they see you when you used to play for Barcelona in your Barcelona jersey and stuff. So they know they know that you're the real footballer.
I has dream big, but I gotta ask you though. You're in Jamaica, and I'm seeing snow in your background.
I'm telling you, I thought about that,
What is that about?
I thought about that, and I'm saying that. Okay. I wonder, because I'm normally in between places. So my people in the States know that, okay, maybe he's home. Let's go and check over his house. And the Jamaicans will come and pass by and check me here.
Dion, a part of the conversation that I think is important is the conversation about maybe the CFU taking the lead with these echo reports and seeing how a plan could be put together. I spoke to him once. I'm trying to get Kamara David on. Maybe you can help with that. I think I don't know what's going on with the CFU, but I think to have a conversation with him where he can communicate and share what's going on would be good. So if you can help with that, I'm going to try to reach out to him again.
Yeah, we have been trying to reach out. We have been trying to. Which we will not disclose. You know what? It is, Andre. We have made our attempts.
Man have made some attempts. I'll tell you about that one, Dion.
No, but I wanna take the time to commend the both of you, Manixman and Andre, for what you're doing, because if we all are very, very optimistic, and we want to see the Caribbean have a better showing. And I think this is what we need to do. We need to be honest. We need to be straightforward. We need to ask the hard questions. And we need to come up with a proper plan for moving forward, because we don't want to be the country that has the potential but never really getting to the end. So we want to be able to do whatever we can. And that will come from, we have the ambition, but having the ambition is one thing. What do we do in terms of planning? How do we get resources? How are we held accountable? And I think the more we do this, because our problems are very, very similar. Just listen to you guys. Our problems are very, very similar. And why not try and work through the solutions together? So I want to commend you guys for what you're doing.
Yeah.
I just hope that is there the possibility of coming together to have a workshop for coaches and looking at different ideas and methodology. For me, I hope that eventually this is done on the internet, right, and it gets around, hopefully, and people get a chance to listen to it. But I hope people take it as a conversation that is coming from people who care about football in the region, who care about Jamaican football, who care about Trinidad and Tobago football, and not take it and be offended by it, because it's not intended to offend. And I think if someone is offended by it, it probably says more about them than it says about us, actually. So the intent is to try to start a discussion. I think the public needs to be more involved in the football, start a discussion. I know in Jamaica, I know you guys know who the talent, know all your players and where they play in any part all over the world. I know in Trinidad, the public don't know the Trinidad and Tobago players. We need to get the public involved. We need to get the football. We need good communication to take place regularly. so that people know what's going on and see that the football is heading in the right direction, because there's too much at stake. We talk about finances. There's a lot of money at stake. You qualify for a World Cup, right? That the potential to fund a lot of things. And one of the things that I want us to discuss in the future is, when you look at we don't like to compare ourselves to the USA, in particular, in Canada and those countries, but I think we could, right? Because we were the country that knocked the USA out of the World Cup. But when you look, those countries have CBA agreements that they come up with, things that we don't have in the region, right? When the players go to play for the national team, they know exactly what they're going to earn, what they're going to earn for a win, what they're going to earn for a draw, what they're going to earn for a loss. Okay, whether it's a friendly game or a competitive game, the numbers are different slightly. Those are things that would help improve the experience, right? And we need to talk a little bit about those things and see, well, why. And Dion, I'm not asking you now, it's something for the future, why we don't have those things in the region, why we don't have those things in Trinidad and Tobago. So, but thank you, Dion, for coming on. Thank you for management for taking time today to make this happen.
Definitely.
I appreciate the both of you. And
yeah. And for Coach Boris, let me just say this to Coach Boris. Coach Boris, when I come off, right, I'm going to connect you with Dion, so he can he's going to help you with some stuff. So I'm going to connect both of you, right? Andre, I'll send you all the information, Coach Boris. But thank you so much. So don't go too far, Dion. We hope to have you back on, especially, I mean, in probably after 23 more games in the Premier League. We'll help you. We'll probably have you back on to share, lifting the title with us. I don't know, just wait, But
when I saw the referee yesterday, man, I got scared. Eh?
I'm telling you.
When I saw the referee, I got scared. I said, Lord have mercy. But
it's not him again, but it worked out for our good, right? But yeah, man. But thank you so much. Thanks to everyone. Listen, if you are on the I Am Sure Sports platform, what you need to do is to go over to the I Am Sure Sports Caribbean and subscribe to that. Like the video, right? Vice versa. If you're on I Am Sure Sports Caribbean, you can come over on the I Am Sure Sports and like it. Listen, share the content. Right? It's important that you share it. Get persons out there listening, right? The good thing with the platform is that you don't have to listen it at all at once. You can listen, you can pause, you can come back on your way to work, you can play it in the car and just listen to the conversation. And wherever you are on the footballing scale, something in this would apply to you. All right. Again, it's about making changes, and we are being the change that we want to see. And we share this with you because we want you to be a part of the change. And until all of us come together and put our shoulders to the wheel, a lot of this will not change. Right. We are a Caribbean people. Right. You saw what happened with Brexit. Things have gotten worse because they broke apart. Mm-hmm. It is indicating that we need to come together. One of the most successful regions in our era is the United States, right? By its very name, it shows that those they have individual law. When that team goes on the field, it is one. It is one football association that pulls all of those states together and governs everything. And CFU, we wanted to take that as the module for the Caribbean. How can we govern in such a way that when Jamaica excels, it is the Caribbean. When Trinidad excels, it is the Caribbean, because we're adding value to each territory. We're not trying to be better than each other. We're trying to make the entire Caribbean proud by making all of us look good in any one nation that is represented. And that's how we have to reculture our lives and our minds and our attitudes. And that is why I want to see CARICOM successful. Because that's the best of the Caribbean, when all of us are one. right? When Usain Bolt runs or Shelly and Fraser, it is Jamaica, right? We see that Otto Bolden, all of these things. Many Jamaicans supported Manchester because of Dwight York. That's what we want, because we are one Caribbean. So thanks again to all of you for being a part of this. Enjoy the rest of the festive season. Be safe. And and just spread the love, man. We say love for the love. Thanks again, gentlemen. It was good. I've taken up enough of your time. Go and finish drinking. I don't know, in Jamaica we say sorrel. I don't know if you have that there. Eating your we do curry goat and sorrel and all of that. I don't know what you do at Christmas. That's what we do. So go and enjoy the rest of the Christmas. Andre, you say the final word, and
just
then we'll
want
close.
to tell you, be careful when you go outside. Make sure you dress properly. It look like it's cold. I don't want you to get sick.
Yes. That's a good one. I'll definitely do that. But do you realize that I'm not dressed appropriate for the weather that is behind me?
When you're inside, I'm sure you have your fireplace burning. I'm sure you have your heat on.
Yeah. You see, the forehead is very shiny, like I'm sweating. I said, look at outside. I must be in the basement or something. Maybe I'm in the doghouse.
Yeah, thank you very much for coming on. Okay.
Thank you for having me. Appreciate it.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, man.
And we'll talk.
Yeah, man. So you know what it is, people? This is I Am Sure Sports. I Am Sure Caribbean. And when it gets to this point, we say we are over and we are OUT out of here.
Oh, Chaba Dog, SK New Erdis, the body out there, Sniper King I represent for I Am Sure Sports. You get to me, I say, when you want the latest news and sports and updates and all of that, check out I Am Sure Sports. You know the thing goes in. Remember, cover the whole island. Remember Kingston, Westmoreland, Galchester, Ocherase, Galtigo Bay, everywhere. I Am Sure Sports, check it out for the latest news and latest updates. Sniper King I represent. Where them feel like, yeah, someone on for the food from young, from where they knee height. I Am Sure Sports. Yeah, dog.